Hello students, today I'm going to take a class on communicable or infectious diseases seen in children. The first disease is tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a major health problem in developing countries. The main causative organism is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Now the burden of the disease, if you see in India, around 1.8 million cases occurs annually, with 0.8 cases sputum positive for pulmonary tuberculosis. And tuberculosis accounts for 21%. Here there are around 21% of new tuberculosis cases, and 2/3 of the cases occur in Southeast Asia. Therefore, India is one of the highest tuberculosis burden country in the world. Every day, about 2,000 people become infected. More than around 5,000 develop tuberculosis and more than 1,000 die due to this disease. The prevalence of tuberculosis infection, if you can see, the prevalence is 30% and the incidence is 2.1% in children less than 14 years, and the incidence of active tuberculosis is 168 per 1 lakh per year. The mode of transmission is mainly by airborne infection. So it spreads by airborne. Number 2, when it is expelled as droplet, when suppose a person infected with tuberculosis, he coughs at another person, it can quickly, one person can infect around 100 people around them. So it is such an infectious disease, and it enters or it is expelled as micro droplets during cough or sneeze from an infected person. Coming on to the pathophysiology, this bacilli, it reaches the bronchioles and it causes inflammatory reaction with the polymorphonuclear leukocytes. Any antigen that enters, you know that there is inflammatory action which takes place in response to the antigen. And this tubercle bacilli, it multiplies in the blood and enters the lungs. Mostly it enters the upper part of the lung, the apex, and it forms a primary focus called as the Gons focus. It is nothing but this, and mainly it is nothing. This Gons focus is primarily made of this debris of that tubercle bacilli, and it forms a focus on the upper part of the lung, and it forms a scar. And this infection, it spreads over a period of time through the lymph nodes to other areas, leading to tuberculosis of other regions. Mainly we have tuberculosis of the spine. It can lead to tuberculosis in the lymph glands. Almost all the glands, organs can be affected. Coming on to the manifestations, the main manifestations are low-grade fever, loss of weight. Typically these children can have loss of weight, fever mostly in the evening. They can have evening intermittent spikes in the evening, anorexia or loss of appetite, fatigue can be there, decreased movements, they'll be very lethargic, feeling very tired and fatigued. They can have decreased breath sounds on auscultation, anemia can be there, pallor and weakness. Investigations are mainly tuberculin test, otherwise called Mantoux test, where 0.1 ml of purified protein derivative, this is nothing but it is injected into the forearm. It is injected over the left forearm, where the forearm is divided into 3, and in the middle part we give the injection intradermally with 15-degree angle, and after 72 hours the test results are analyzed. Chest x-ray can be done, where as you can see in the picture, you can find the Gons complex here, very visibly seen. You can see that focus over the left side of the lung. Then you have the sputum AFB. AFB is acid-fast bacilli, where you tell the patient to, or the child, if it's an older child, they will be able to cooperate for this procedure. they need to cough and expel the sputum. Early morning sputum is advised. They should be morning before, as soon as they get up, they need to rinse their mouth and cough and take the sputum. That is sent for acid fast bacilli. The next one is CSF. If they suspect tuberculous meningitis, that means infection in the brain, then they go on to do a lumbar puncture to rule out the CSF for tuberculous meningitis. Mantoux test, as I already told, 0.1 ml is injected in the left forearm and it is read after 48 to 72 hours. Mainly, if it is less than 5 millimeter, we need to measure it with a scale or an inch tape. If the induration diameter is less than 5 millimeter, it is negative. If it is 5 to 9 millimeter, then it means that the child has been exposed to the infection. If it is above 10 millimeter, it is positive. The child is positive for tuberculosis. The main treatment is anti-tubercular drugs, and rarely they go in for other corticosteroids and other treatment. If it is tubercular meningitis, they also administer corticosteroids. There is something called pediatric DOTS. DOTS is nothing but direct observation treatment short course. This was introduced by the government mainly because there were a lot of relapse seen. Children never failed to, they stopped taking drugs. So this is mainly directly observed treatment short course is mainly, it is the main responsibility of the healthcare workers to see that the child takes the treatment and follows it up regularly. The treatment or duration of the child with tuberculosis is between 6 months to 1 year. If it is a pulmonary TB new child who is identified, the treatment is just for 6 months. But if it is a relapse or a TB meningitis or a miliary TB, where the TB or a disseminated TB where it spreads to other areas, the treatment is prolonged for more than 1 year. So the weight, as you can see, pediatric DOTS, it contains mainly of the following drugs. The drugs that are usually given are isoniazid, ethambutol, rifampicin, streptomycin and pyrazinamide. Streptomycin nowadays it is rarely given, but the other 4 drugs are commonly given drugs. Along with this, pyridoxine is also given. As you can see, the drug regimen, there are 2 types, category 1 and category 2. Category 1 is if there is any primary complex. If you can see in a chest x-ray any primary complex, immediately you start them for treatment for 6 months. As you can see, there is 2 months of intensive phase and 4 months of continuation phase. What does this mean? Intensive phase lasts for 2 months. After the sputum is found to be positive, the patient has to take the following drugs: isoniazid, rifampicin, pyrazinamide and ethambutol. These are the 4 drugs which has to be taken for 2 months, and after 2 months again the sputum will be repeated to be testing for whether positive. If it is positive or whatever negative, they need to continue the treatment for another 4 months with isoniazid and rifampicin alone for 4 months. At the end of 6 months, again a repeat sputum is tested. The second category is category 2, where this is advised for children who relapse, who do not take treatment properly, who fail in taking the treatment regularly, interrupted treatment, who take the drugs intermittently or would have stopped the treatment for a while, and all these children will follow the category 2. Here the daily regimen of is mainly the intensive treatment is given for 2 months and then the continuation phase for 5 months. Here again it is the same thing. They give other drugs including, apart from these drugs, streptomycin or streptomycin can also be given along with it, and in the continuation phase, along with the rifampicin and isoniazid, ethambutol also can be added. If it is tubercular meningitis or disseminated TB, the treatment is given for a period of 1 year. Coming on to the complaints, mainly the management is, apart from anti-tubercular drugs, we need to explain and teach the children about nutrition, high protein, high calorie diet, vitamin C and calcium should be encouraged. Periodical weight checking and checkups are necessary because they will have very drastic weight loss, so we need to check their weights. Administration of drugs, looking for their compliance to intake of drugs and follow up is very important. Now coming on to the little bit about these drugs, as I already told you, these drugs can cause certain side effects. Isoniazid is given at 15 mg per kg. Ethambutol is given at 20 to 25 mg per kg. Rifampicin is given at 5 to 10 mg per kg. And pyrazinamide is given at 20 mg per kg. If you see isoniazid is a drug which can cause peripheral neuritis. Therefore, along with isoniazid, we give pyridoxine 10 mg along with it to prevent peripheral neuritis, reduce that. Ethambutol is another important drug which has a side effect of optic neuritis. Therefore, regular eye checkups are recommended for these children once in a year. Rifampicin is a drug. It has hepatotoxic effects, as well as it mainly, as I said, it can affect the liver, and also it can cause orange color of urine, sweat, and everything. Mainly the urine, the sweat, and tears. Everything can turn orange. So we need to give adequate explanation to the mother regarding rifampicin. Streptomycin is an ototoxic drug which can cause deafness if it is used for a longer period of time. So all these drugs are bactericidal, which kills the organism, except ethambutol, which is a bacteriostatic drug. Coming on to the parental advice, as I previously told, we need to explain the parents about the compliance to therapy. Especially parents are the main people who help the children to take the drug. So we need to constantly encourage and follow up them on the regular, whether they are regularly administering the drug to the children. Proper coughing and sneezing techniques, especially cough etiquettes, to be taught to the parents. They to use separate handkerchiefs for the child when they cough and sneeze, to wear a mask when they go outside, to avoid overcrowding. All these has to be explained to the parents. Use of BCG vaccine can be allowed, but not during active tuberculosis. When they have the treatment, it can be given after the treatment. Importance of nutritious diet is very important. So as I already previously mentioned in the previous slide, we need to encourage them about high protein and high calories diet. Coming on to the preventive measures, early detection and prompt treatment can really help and prevent a lot of complications. In any case, any exposure or contact with the family members, the other known contacts also have to be tested. So they need to undergo chest x-ray, they have to have a Mantoux test done. Prophylactic anti-tuberculosis drugs can be given if they have any contact history. Improving living conditions such as preventing or avoiding overcrowding and adequate ventilation, providing or enhancing adequate ventilation is very important in preventing the transmission. Now the next disease is chickenpox. Chickenpox is highly contagious viral infection. The causative organism is varicella. Here chickenpox appears with lesions in crops. It occurs together with centripetal distribution. What is centripetal distribution? Centripetal means the lesions are more towards the abdomen, the trunk, compared to the face. So it is more towards the trunk compared to the face and extremities. Here the lesion starts as macules. Macules are tiny lesions less than 1 centimeters. So macules, then it becomes papule, little bit raised projections, and then it becomes vesicles. Vesicles are those filled with clear fluid. Then it becomes pustules filled with pus, and then it breaks down to form crust. They are nothing. Crust is velvety red appearance of skin that is peeled off. The next one is, as you can see in this picture, you can see the picture of a macule, the papule, the pustule, the vesicle, the pustule and the crust. So mainly, if you can see, it forms, so it initially starts with a skin discoloration, then it forms like a pimple leading to a fluid filled sac. Then the blister breaks down to release, the blister has a pus which breaks down to form the crust. Later it forms brownish discoloration rash which is called scab. This is the time where after the scab gets for once only when the scab falls down, the period of infectivity is over. Till then the child can infect the other children. The mode of transmission is through direct contact with patient, close contact by touching the other patient, or it can also be transmitted through droplets. When a patient who is infected, they cough, or through droplets it can spread to the other person. It can also spread through indirect contact with clothes or fomites. The utensils, fomites are nothing but the objects or utensils used by the infected person. The next one, incubation period, is 14 to 21 days. What is meant by incubation period? Incubation period is the period from which the organism enters the body to the period in which a period where the patient or the child exhibits the symptoms. This period is called as incubation period. Now there are two phases, important phases to remember. The first one is the prodromal phase. The prodromal phase, initially they start with fever, running nose, and they can have vague symptoms such as headache, arthralgia and body pain. Slowly it can lead to the eruptive phase where there is rapid evolution of lesions. Here it appears in crops, the lesions appears in crops, and they have a dewdrop appearance with redness or erythema around the lesions. Slowly, mainly the distribution of these lesions are centripetal, more concentrated on the trunk. The complications of varicella or chickenpox are, they can have bacterial skin infections, secondary skin infections. Number 2, they can have respiratory infections such as pneumonia. The next complication is septicemia. The infection in the blood can spread, becoming secondary bacterial infection and leading to sepsis. The next one is encephalitis, where it can be transmitted through the blood into the brain, leading to encephalitis, inflammation of the brain parenchyma. The treatment is mainly antihistamine. These children can have pruritus or itching. So antihistamine drugs, they reduce pruritus or itching. Secondary infections can be prevented by the use of antibiotics and antiviral drugs, which I have not mentioned in this slide, but antiviral drugs such as acyclovir is also given at 10 mg per kg. It is given as Q8 hourly, every 8 hourly. The management of children with chickenpox is, you need to put them, isolate them, and you need to take care of skin. Tell them not to scratch the skin because mainly they will have allergic, they can have itching. Tell them not to scratch. You can cut their nails so that it doesn't injure the skin. You can administer oxygen if they do not maintain saturation. Please see that you change their position. For fever, you can administer antipyretics. Nutrition can be with high calorie and high protein diet. Hygiene can be enhanced by cleansing the skin. Every day, daily bath can be given. Oral hygiene and eye care has to be given. Now, the prevention is by administering chickenpox vaccine at 12 months of age. This is an optional vaccine. If the child has already got a chickenpox, you can also administer passive immunization through administration of IV gamma globulins. These are nothing but antibodies for chickenpox, which are in the form of vaccines. It can also be given. Avoid contact with infected persons. If suppose a sibling has this infection, we need to take utmost care to avoid contact with those children. Next, coming on to the next one is measles. Measles is an acute, highly infectious viral disease. This is caused by rubiola virus and it is transmitted by droplet. If an infected person coughs or sneezes through the droplet, it can spread to the other person. The incubation period is 7 to 10 days. Now here the manifestations are, there are 3 stages in measles. The first stage is called as the Cattrall stage or enanthema stage. This is the stage where the child starts having cold, fever, anorexia and vague symptoms such as uneasy feeling. Then you will find Koplik spots during this stage. What is this Koplik spots? Koplik spots are tiny white papules. It will be surrounded by a red area. It will be seen mainly over the mucous membranes of the mouth, in the buccal mucosa, all these areas you will find it. The eruptive stage is called as exanthema. This is the second stage where it occurs 3 to 5 days after the onset of fever. Here you will find maculopapular rash, reddish rashes with slight elevation over the body. The rash mainly starts over the face and neck and then it spreads downwards. Here mostly the lesions are centrifugal. Centrifugal means you will find it more from the periphery, that is over the face, over the hands, and then it will progress downwards towards the trunk. Whereas in chickenpox it is centripetal. It is more located over the center or in the trunk and the back. Next stage is called as a convalescent stage or the decline stage. Here slowly the rash disappears, the fever subsides and it leaves a coppery brown colored area and slowly it starts to peel or disquamate. So these are the 3 stages, the Cattrall stage, the eruptive stage and the convalescent stage. Now coming on to the complications of measles. First one is otitis media. They can have infection of the middle ear, that is termed as otitis media, bronchopneumonia, that is infection of the parenchyma, lung parenchyma. They can have laryngotracheobronchitis, that is otherwise called croup, C-R-O-U-P. It is nothing but there is inflammation of the, as the word suggests, inflammation of the larynx, trachea and the bronchi. They can be atelectasis or collapse of one or two more lobes of the lung. Stomatitis is inflammation of the angle of the mouth or mainly the mouth. Enteritis, where children can present with diarrhea and so on, and encephalitis, as I already told you. These are the complications of measles. The important complication is also malnutrition. After measles, these children can also have malnutrition. The treatment for measles, for fever, symptomatic treatment is done by giving antipyretics for fever. Cough syrup, if you find there is productive cough, you can give that. Otherwise, antibiotics to prevent secondary infections are given. Management is by bed rest, oral hygiene, because it can lead to secondary infections, therefore oral hygiene. Eye care can be given. Nutritional therapy, you need to explain to them about increased fluid intake, protein and calorie rich diet. Prevention is by active immunization. Mainly we give the single dose at 9 to 10 months. It is given subcutaneously as 0.5 ml. Now the next one is mumps. This is an acute generalized infectious disease characterized by enlargement of the salivary glands. Salivary glands, as you know, there are different glands. We have the parotid, the submandibular. Now the parotid gland is the one which is enlarged in this. Now the causative organism is paramyxovirus. The mode of transmission is by airborne infection. It spreads through air. And the incubation period, similar like chickenpox, is 14 to 21 days. The manifestations are, these children can present with fever, sore throat, they can have ear pain and pain on chewing and tenderness. The complications are, they can have orchitis. Orchitis is nothing but mainly inflammation of the testis, infection and inflammation of the testicular gland. Then they can have very common in male children, meningoencephalitis, where they can have seizures, headache, and vomiting. Pancreatitis, very rarely it can lead to pancreatitis, where they present with epigastric pain, distress, or vomiting. They can have diarrhea. Sometimes they can come present with shock. Neuritis, myocarditis, and hepatitis are the other complications. The diagnosis is by physical examination. You will be able to observe enlarged, painful, and tender parotid gland. The parotid gland just lies below the angle of the mouth. Just below that you can find it. Management is by giving aspirin for pain, bed rest. Hot fomentation can be given to reduce pain. These children can have severe pain while opening or swallowing, so liquid diet can be advised, which has more calories, can be advised for these children. Prevention is by active immunization with MMR. MMR is measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, which is a live vaccine. It is given between 15 to 18 months of age. Passive immunization, if suppose the child has got mumps even before receiving the vaccine, then you can give before 48 hours passive vaccine or passive immunization. This is nothing but you are administering immunoglobulins, therefore helping the child to acquire immunity. The next condition is poliomyelitis, which is a highly contagious disease. It spreads by orophycal route, and the organism causing polio is mainly poliovirus type 1, 2, and 3. The pathophysiology, the virus multiplies in the lymph nodes and it enters the blood. It results in viremia. When the blood infection of the blood with the virus is called viremia, and this virus, it multiplies, it enters the nerve cells and causes damage to the medulla oblongata, pons, and the vestibular nuclei. Mainly it affects the peripheral nerves and the cerebellum, and it also causes paralysis of the skeletal muscles. Incubation period is 5 to 35 days. There are mainly 4 stages in this polio. First one is the asymptomatic stage, where they do not present with any symptoms. The abortive stage, where they can have generalized symptoms such as headache, vomiting, fever, and sore throat. The third stage is the non-paralytic stage, where they can present with headache, fever. Here they will typically present with neck stiffness, pain over the extremities, and hypersensitivity in the skin. The next one is called as the paralytic stage. In the paralytic stage, here the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord are destroyed, leading to flaccid paralysis. Flaccidity is nothing but loss of muscle tone. Therefore, the legs and arms become paralyzed here. There is another type of polio called bulbar polio, where there is facial and pharyngeal paralysis. The main investigation is done by nasopharyngeal swab. The treatment is analgesics for reducing pain during the non-paralytic stage, where they can have stiffness, neck stiffness, and pain and tenderness over the extremity. You can administer analgesics. Laxatives, some children can have urinary, they will have constipation. You can give laxatives. Antibiotics to prevent secondary infections. Respiratory symptoms can be dealt in case if they present with distress or respiratory failure. Then we intubate and start them on ventilator care. And some children can have retention of urine. In that case, you can insert an indwelling catheter to drain the urine. The next condition is diphtheria, which is a highly contagious disease. The main causative organism is Corynebacterium diphtheriae. The formation of here in diphtheria, there is a pseudomembrane that is formed upon the mucosa of the respiratory tract. This pseudomembrane that is formed, what happens, it does not allow the entry of gas, it doesn't allow the entry of oxygen. Therefore, it's dangerous. Basically, it results in this bacteria, it enters through any open wound. Mainly, it results in toxemia. infection in the blood, and it also produces more toxins. Diphtheria produces a lot of exotoxins which can affect the heart, resulting in myocarditis, inflammation of the myocardium. And this is a serious infection where the children can have a lot of severe symptoms. The incubation period is 2 to 5 days. Here they can present with three types. One is facial diphtheria, second one is laryngeal diphtheria, and nasal diphtheria. If you see the nasal diphtheria, this is very rare. It can be unilateral or bilateral. It can mainly occurs where this pseudomembrane can be formed near the nose or nose inside the nasal canal, or it can obstruct the flow of air. So next one is laryngeal diphtheria. It is also less common, mainly when the larynx is a voice box. When that is affected, you will find they can have brassy cough, hoarseness of voice. Some children can present with dyspnea and cyanosis. The facial or the tonsillar is a common type of diphtheria. As you can see in the picture, the typical white portion, as you can see, this is you can see a white patch here. It's otherwise called tonsillar diphtheria. They can have pain and difficulty in swallowing, generalized malaise and fever, and you can see a whitish grey patch on observation. Sometimes you will find the cervical lymph nodes also being enlarged. The investigation is mainly by collection of swab. You can do a throat swab and collection of history. The complications, as I already told you, they can have myocarditis, inflammation of the myocardium, which is the middle layer of the heart. The next one is post-diphtheria paralysis of the palate. As a result, after the infection, these children they will not be able to move the palate. Therefore, the speech, the swallowing, all this will be affected. Treatment is by giving anti-diphtheria serum. Mainly it is an anti-diphtheria antitoxin which is given as 20,000 to 1 lakh unit. It has to be given within 5 days. It really helps the child to recover from the infection. Other antibiotics given are procaine, penicillin, erythromycin or amoxicillin. These are also other effective drugs. The management is mainly observing for vital signs. Mainly you need to look at the respiratory rate and look for signs of shock. Watch for any obstruction. Look for the air entry, the symmetrical movement of the chest. Administer oxygen and suction secretions if there are too many. Tracheostomy is done if there is complete obstruction of the airway. Normal saline gargle can be given if there is pain. And nutrition, you can advise them to take liquid or soft diet. Because they can have pain, they will find it difficult to swallow. You can tell them to take liquid or soft diet. The prevention, as I already told you, is by administering anti-diphtheria serum 2000 units, isolating the child for 3 to 4 weeks, and active immunization is achieved by giving DPT vaccine. DPT vaccine is given at 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks, 1.5 years or 18 months, and at 5 years. The next condition is pertussis. Pertussis is a highly infectious disease. It is caused by Bordetella pertussis. The mode of transmission is mainly airborne. Here, this pertussis, it results in spasmodic cough with typical whoop. What is whoop? So that is typically the whoop, just like how a crow, when you hear the sound of that, you will hear they will have this that continuous cough with that sound, whoop sound you will hear in these children. Young infants less than 5 years are very commonly affected. Mostly it is seen, the incidence is 6 months to 4 years of age. In the incubation period is 7 to 14 days. Here also there are 3 stages: the catral stage, the paroxysmal stage, and the convalescent stage. The catral stage, similarly like measles, this is the stage where they can have vague symptoms such as fever, sore throat, headache, myalgia or body pain, and headache. So these are the generalized symptoms that they can have in this stage, and they can have nasal discharge. And slowly in the paroxysmal stage, they can have cough, severe cough, which is more, they will not be able to eat, they won't be able to drink, they can have continuous cough, paroxysmal cough with a whoop sound. So this is typically seen during this stage. It is otherwise called a 90 days cough. So they can have continuous severe cough if treatment is not given. So this stage is called as the paroxysmal stage. Some children can also have vomiting after as a result of cough. Some can go into hypoxia resulting in seizures. Some children, they can also have bleed with epistaxis, subconjunctival hemorrhage or bleed as a result of excessive and forced cough. The third stage is convalescent stage, where the symptoms reduces, the cough settles down and they slowly recover. The investigations done are we take a WBC white blood count, the ESR will be elevated. When you do a chest x-ray, you can find segmental atelectasis because of continuous cough, obstruction and impaired gas exchange. You find there is a collapse of the lung, lobes of the lung called atelectasis, or there is emphysema. Emphysema is distension of the alveoli because of airway obstruction, and pneumothorax where there is air in the thoracic cavity. Nasopharyngeal swab is used, can be done. PCR is also done, polymerase chain reaction. This also helps to rule out the virus. Next one, complications are pneumothorax, as I already told, emphysema, bronchiectasis. Bronchiectasis is nothing but dilatation of the bronchi. Otitis media or infection of the middle ear. Convulsions, as I already told you, intracranial hemorrhage. Hemorrhage can be anywhere. It can be subconjunctival, just below the conjunctiva. It can be in the brain, can be epistaxis, any of this. Prolapse of rectum. As you continually cough, the rectal muscles become weakened and it can result in prolapse of rectum. And hernia. Hernia is protrusion of the intestinal organs through a sac in the abdomen, through a weakened portion in the abdomen, because the abdominal muscles become weak as a result of intra-abdominal pressure. Therefore, it results in hernia. The treatment is you can give sedatives or antispasmodic cough mixture and antibiotics to prevent infection and bacterial infection. The management, initially you need to isolate the child. If there is a lot of secretions, you can suction gently, give oxygen if there is hypoxia. Nutrition, adequate amount of liquid diet. If they cannot take orally because of cough, you can put the child on nil per oral and administer IV fluids. If the child is able to take slowly orally, you can initially start IV NG fluid, NG feeds or nasogastric feeds. Then you can progress slowly taper to oral feeds. Nutrition, you need to give more amount of liquids and observe for convulsions. Tetanus is another dangerous disease. It is also a communicable disease. Mainly it is caused by the direct inoculation of bacteria through contaminated material. Either it is from the soil or it can be through hands, when children touch, and it can be through aseptic or in an unhygienic way. If they conduct the delivery, children can get this disease. Mainly the tetanus bacilli is the Clostridium tetani. The incubation period is 2 days to several weeks. Manifestations are, as you can see in the picture, you can see the jaw opened like that. So that's called lockjaw or trismus, where they will not be able to close their mouth. They can have tenderness over that area. Rhizus sardonicus, where these children can have features where the child will not be able to smile, they will not be able to do any of these expressions. They will have that is because of the tightness and tenderness of the muscles. Opisthotonous position, as you can see this child, this is the child with opisthotonous position. You can see that the lumbar region is curved and the child's head is posteriorly bent backward. So these are the symptoms. The treatment is antitoxin tetanus serum can be administered, antibiotics can be given, muscle relaxants such as diazepam can be given, and tracheostomy can be performed if the child goes into respiratory failure. Gentle suction can be done, administer oxygen if the child is hypoxic, antipyretics can be given for fever. Nutrition, you can start with IV fluids or NG feeds with so that the fluid and electrolyte imbalances can be corrected. Position changing is important. If there is a wound that has caused this tetanus, you need to clean that wound and you can remove and do daily dressing. Dim light, because any external stimuli will cause fasciculations and seizures in these children. Therefore, provide them with a dim, dark room and do not disturb the child. Minimal external stimuli with loud or noise or anything, minimal stimuli has to be given. See that we need to cluster the care. We should not disturb the child frequently because that can cause aggravate seizures. Prevention is by TT, administering injection tetanus toxide 0.5 ml. It is given as 3 doses in 10, mainly in 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks, and also it is given at 18 months or 1.5 years and 5 years. This is nothing but DPT vaccine. DPT is a combination of diphtheria, pertussis and tetanus. Here, if there is any wound, the wound has to be cleaned with soap and water or hydrogen peroxide. Very important prevention, you need to teach the parents about wound care. Any wound or any infection or any cuts with any iron rods or anything, we need to tell the parents to immediately bring the child to have a TT dose. The next diagnosis or disease condition is typhoid fever. The causative organism for typhoid fever is Salmonella typhi. The mode of transmission, similarly like polio, is orophycal route. The incubation period is 7 to 21 days. The main manifestations are, the onset is very gradual. It leads to fever which will be of a step ladder pattern. Step ladder pattern is nothing but, if you take a temperature chart, you will find the fever going like this, like a step, like a ladder. So it starts with 95, 99 and then goes to 100, then comes slowly to 99, then 101, then comes down to 100. So like that it goes like a step ladder. So mainly the manifestations are, they can also have coated tongue. They will look very toxic with constipation, diarrhea, abdominal pain and fever. The complications are, they can have intestinal perforation. Mainly it will affect the villi and the Peyer's patches in the intestine, leading to perforation of the intestine. Peyer's patches are immunology cells which provides immune response. So these patches are also affected. It can also lead to myocarditis, bronchitis, encephalitis, neuritis, inflammation of the nerve and alopecia. They can be relapsed because for at least 3 months the bacteria gets excreted in the stool and urine. So blood culture is the best thing which can show the Salmonella typhi. Vidal agglutination or Vidal test, this is the test done on the 5th to 7th day after fever or infection occurs. Neutropenia, where the WBCs will be less. Salmonella, you can also do a stool and a urine test which you will be able to identify the growth of Salmonella. The treatment is chloramphenicol or cortisons. Nowadays the recent treatment is you give ciprofloxacin or cefuroximine. These are the drugs which are commonly given nowadays. The management is fever management. Monitor the vital signs. Administer fluids through IV, or if the child can take orally, give them a bland diet because they will have intestinal perforation. We don't want to hurt the intestine more by giving spicy foods. So give them a bland diet with high calorie and high protein. Care of the skin is very essential because some children can have diarrhea. General hygiene by taking regular bath is essential. The management is fever management by giving antipyretics, monitor the vital signs and administer IV fluids or oral fluids, as we already saw. The prevention is by active immunization. As we already know that typhoid, there is a vaccine. By 2 years, they can give typhoid vaccine. The first dose is 0.5 ml and later it can also be given with a gap of 1 month. Disinfection of excreta is very important. As I already told you, this Salmonella can be excreted in the urine and stool for at least 3 months. Therefore, tell the parents about hand washing after cleaning or after defecation. Proper hand washing is very essential. Next one is infective hepatitis. Hepatitis is inflammation of the liver. The causative organisms can be various. It can be hepatitis A, B, C, D. There are K, hepatitis K. There are all these viruses, but the most common are hepatitis A and B. The incubation period is for hepatitis A is 15 to 50 days and hepatitis B is 60 to 160 days. The mode of transmission for hepatitis A is orofecal route. Hepatitis A and D is by orofecal route. B and C is by blood and blood products. The manifestations typically are they will present with anorexia, poor feeding. Anorexia is poor feeding, nausea, vomiting, fatigue. They will look very dull, dark urine, especially pale colored stools. They can have jaundice, abdominal pain. Some children most of them will have hepatomegaly, liver enlargement, constipation and headache. Investigations are we do an hepatitis A antibody test and also hepatitis B surface antigen. If suppose the infection has come into the body, you can find the antibody being elevated. The liver function test, mainly because the liver is enlarged, serum bilirubin and serum albumin. Albumin is the one important protein which is synthesized by the liver. Therefore, this has to be checked. It will be low in hepatitis, and serum bilirubin will be high because the bile is not getting excreted because of the impaired function of the liver. Increased prothrombin time because vitamin K is mainly produced here. All the clotting factors, calcium, and all these are also being produced here. Prothrombin, fibrin. Therefore, this also will be increased. Urine albumin also will be increased. The treatment is supportive treatment. The management is supportive is nothing but symptomatic. If they have fever, you give fever, you manage fever. If they have mainly you need to give them dietary management. That is what is supportive. The management, other management are isolation, and you need to teach them about proper disposal of syringes. If it is hepatitis B or C, you need to tell them about proper disposal of syringes because it mainly spreads through contaminated needles or syringes, or it can spread through from the mother to the child. The adequate comfort and rest is essential. Bed rest, vital signs have to be monitored for fever, especially the temperature. General hygiene has to be maintained, and nutrition with high carbohydrate rich diet can be given. Avoid spicy foods and fatty foods. Prevention is by using safe drinking water. Tell the parents to give boiled cool water and immunoglobulin therapy, which we usually don't give. The next condition is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. AIDS, which is called as AIDS, it was first recognized in India in 1982. The mode of transmission is mainly bloodborne. In children, how does it occur? When they are born to a mother with HIV through transplacental route, it can be transmitted through exposure to contaminated blood products, needles or syringes. When children with certain conditions like thalassemia, those children who require frequent blood transfusions, they are at high risk. Sexual abuse. Children who are abused by an infected person, children with skin piercing procedures like a ear bowl, they want to put any of this which is done in an aseptic technique, blood transfusion and blood products which are infected or contaminated. These are the routes of transmission. Investigations is by blood culture for children less than 15 months. And HIV, the best test, there are two tests. One is ELISA test and Western blot test. The Western blot is a confirmatory test done for HIV. The signs and symptoms are children can present with repeated episodes of diarrhea, candida infections. Candida is nothing but fungal infections. Usually you will see it over the mouth, or it can be in the skin. They can have recurrent respiratory infections. They can have weight loss, failure to thrive. As I told, they will have weight loss, poor feeding. They can have generalized lymph node enlargement, and they can have delayed milestones and encephalopathy leading to seizures, or they can have altered sensorium, delayed milestones. Next one is management. General management, similar to infectious disease like hand washing. You need to follow strict you need to follow standard precautions. Plastic disposable gown and mask has to be worn when you take care of children. Special precautions while handling sharps are important. When you collect specimens, you need to see that you avoid spillage of blood. You need to protect yourself, and then you need to cover if you find any spillage of blood or body fluids, disinfect. It has to be adequately disinfected. Drug therapy is mainly through nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors. There are a lot of these protease fusion inhibitors, but the common drugs we usually give are zidovudin, that's a very good drug, and lamivudin, this is zidovudin, lamivudin, and nevirapine. Nevirapine also is a very good drug that is effectively used in children with HIV. How can we prevent HIV? If the mother has HIV, immediately as soon as the baby is born, prophylactically we need to start the child within 48 to 72 hours with nevirapine and zidovudin. This is the two drug that is given before 72 hours for the child, and then the child has to be monitored and followed up, because there is something called as a window period where the child can for 10 years be asymptomatic and present later with the infection. So the child has to be followed every year. We need to check for the infection, and we also need to screen the others also, the other members of the family. If the wife is infected, we need to look for the husband. We need to also look for most of these children are at risk for tuberculosis, so we need to rule out for tuberculosis by taking relevant tests. And we need to teach them about diet, because well balanced diet is very important. We need to teach them about infection control. Teaching these parents about drug regimen follow up and is very important. They have to take regular intake of drugs is very important. Teach them about the